After 3 centuries, Luna Blackthorn had grown accustomed to the way graveyards smelled, old roses, damp earth, and the lingering sorrow of the living. But tonight, something was different. She paused at the wrought iron gates of Riverside Cemetery, her enhanced hearing picking up a sound that made her chest tighten. Crying. Soft, broken sobs that seemed to echo through the moonless night. Luna's hand instinctively moved to her throat, where her pulse should have been racing. But werewolves didn't get nervous. They hunted. They survived. They didn't stand frozen at cemetery gates because a child was crying. The small figure huddled against the stone pillar was barely visible in the darkness. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves around her shoulders, and she clutched something against her chest like a lifeline. Luna stepped closer, her footsteps silent on the gravel path. The wolf in her catalogued everything, the child scent, thin from hunger and unwashed for days. The way she trembled, not just from cold but from exhaustion. The complete vulnerability that screamed prey to every predatory instinct Luna possessed. But then the child spoke. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I miss you so much. I don't know what to do anymore." The words hit Luna like a physical blow. When was the last time she'd felt anything beyond hunger or the thrill of the hunt? When had her heart last ached for another's pain? The girl lifted the object she'd been holding, a photograph, creased and faded from being carried everywhere. Even from several feet away, Luna could make out the image of a soldier in dress uniform, young and proud and forever frozen in time. "I tried to be brave like you said," the child continued, her whisper carrying on the night air. "But Mama's gone too now, and nobody wants me. I just want to go home." Something warm and unfamiliar slid down Luna's cheek. She lifted her hand in shock, staring at the moisture on her fingertips. Tears. She was crying. She, who hadn't shed a tear since the night she'd been turned, was weeping for a child she didn't even know. The girl's sobs grew quieter, more tired. Her small body swayed as if she might collapse at any moment. Luna found herself moving forward before she could think, before she could remember all the reasons why getting involved was dangerous. "Hey there," she said softly, crouching down to the child's level. "Are you okay?" The girl looked up with eyes that were far too old for her young face. They were brown, like chocolate, and rimmed with red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. "I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just wanted to talk to my daddy." Luna's heart clenched again. "You don't need to apologize. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Mira." The girl's voice was hoarse. "Mira Patterson. I'm Luna. And I think maybe you could use some help." Myra's grip tightened on the photograph. "Are you going to call the police?" "The social worker said if I ran away again, they'd have to put me somewhere far away. But I don't want to go far away. Daddy's here." Every rational thought Luna possessed screamed at her to walk away. To call the authorities from a safe distance and let someone else handle this. She had responsibilities, a pack to lead, territories to protect, a carefully constructed life that depended on staying invisible. But as she looked at this broken little girl clutching her father's picture, all of those rational thoughts crumbled. "No police," Luna said gently. "Not yet. When's the last time you ate something?" Myra's stomach answered for her, growling loudly in the quiet night. The child's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Yesterday, I think. There was half a sandwich in the trash behind the deli." The words made Luna's vision flash red for a moment, not with hunger, but with rage at a world that could let a child go hungry while adults looked the other way. She forced herself to breathe, to think like a human instead of a predator. "Come on," she said, standing and offering her hand. "Let's get you fed." Mira hesitated, years of stranger danger warnings warring with desperation and bone-deep exhaustion. "You don't have to. I don't want to be trouble." "You're not trouble, Mira. Sometimes people just need help." The child's lower lip trembled. "Why are you being nice to me?" "Nobody's nice to me anymore." Luna knelt again, meeting those two old eyes directly. Because every little girl deserves someone to care about her. Especially one brave enough to talk to her daddy even when he can't answer back. Fresh tears spilled down Myra's cheeks, but she nodded and slipped her small hand into Luna's larger one. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Luna's system, not painful, but startling in its warmth and trust. As they walked away from the cemetery, Luna caught herself wondering what she was doing. She lived alone for good reasons. Her kind didn't mix with humans, especially not vulnerable ones. The pack would have questions she couldn't answer. But when Mira squeezed her hand and whispered, "Thank you," in that same soft voice that had stopped Luna's world just minutes before, none of those concerns seemed to matter. What mattered was the child beside her who had somehow reached past 3 centuries of carefully built walls with nothing more than honest grief and a photograph of her hero father. What mattered was that for the first time in longer than she could remember, Luna felt human. Behind them, the cemetery gates stood open in the moonlight, marking the place where 2 lost souls had found each other. Neither of them knew it yet, but that whispered prayer to a dead father had just changed everything. Luna had come to the cemetery as a predator. She was leaving as something else entirely. Chapter 2. Luna's apartment was a study in careful control. Neutral colors, minimal furniture, nothing that could be easily broken during an unexpected transformation. It was functional, safe, and completely unsuited for a child. Mira stood in the doorway, still clutching her father's photograph, her eyes wide as she took in the sparse living space. Luna watched the girl's reaction and felt a stab of something that might have been shame. When had her life become so sterile? So empty of anything that spoke to joy or comfort? "It's nice," Mira said politely, the way children did when they'd been taught good manners. "Thank you for bringing me here." Luna's chest tightened. Even after everything this child had endured, she was still trying to be grateful, still trying to be good. "Are you hungry?" "I think I have some." She opened her refrigerator and stared at the contents. Leftover takeout, energy drinks, and a package of raw meat that definitely wouldn't be appropriate for human consumption. "I could order pizza." Myra's stomach gave another loud rumble, and she pressed her hand against it with embarrassment. "I don't want to be expensive." "Pizza isn't expensive," Luna lied smoothly. She pulled out her phone, then paused. "What do you like on your pizza?" "Anything." The answer came too quickly, with the resignation of someone who'd learned not to have preferences. "I'm not picky." Luna knelt down to Myra's level again, a gesture that was becoming natural despite how foreign it felt. "That's not what I asked." "What do you like?" Myra's eyes darted away, then back. "Cheese is good. And, my daddy used to get pepperoni sometimes. When it wasn't too expensive." "Pepperoni it is." Luna called in the order, then looked around her apartment with fresh eyes. Where was Mira supposed to sleep? What did children need? She'd lived for 3 centuries without ever having to consider these questions. While they waited for the food, Luna found herself studying the child more carefully. Mira had settled on the edge of the couch, her back straight, hands folded in her lap like she was ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. The photograph never left her grip. "Tell me about your dad," Luna said, settling into the chair across from her. Myra's face lit up for the first time since Luna had found her. "He was the best daddy in the whole world. He was really brave, he saved people. And he always made me laugh. He used to say I had the most beautiful smile, and that smiling was like praying because it made other people happy too." The simple words hit Luna harder than they should have. When had she last smiled with genuine joy? When had she last cared about making anyone else happy? "He sounds wonderful. What happened to him?" The light in Myra's eyes dimmed. "He got killed in Afghanistan. A bad man had a bomb, and Daddy pushed his friends out of the way, but he couldn't get away in time." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Mama said he was a hero, but I just wanted him to come home." Luna felt that now familiar ache in her chest. "I'm sure he wanted to come home too. More than anything. Mama said the same thing. But then she got so sad all the time, and she started taking pills to feel better, only they didn't make her better. They made her different. And then one day she took too many and she didn't wake up. The simple, matter-of-fact way Mira described such devastating loss made Luna's hands clench into fists. This child had been abandoned by death, then by grief, then by a system that should have protected her. Where have you been staying since then? Different places. My aunt kept me for a while, but she said I reminded her too much of Mama and it made her sad. Then there was a foster family, but they had 4 other kids and there wasn't enough room. The social worker, Miss Jenkins, she tries real hard, but there's just not enough families who want kids like me. Kids like you? Myra's shoulders hunched. Sad kids. Kids whose parents are dead. Kids who cry too much and have nightmares and ask too many questions about when their real family is coming back. Luna felt something dark and fierce rise in her chest, the protective instinct she'd never felt for anyone except her pack. But this was different. This wasn't about territory or survival. This was about justice for a child who'd done nothing wrong except love people who couldn't stay. The pizza arrived, and Luna watched in amazement as Mira ate with careful, deliberate bites, as if the food might disappear if she enjoyed it too much. But gradually, as her immediate hunger was satisfied, she began to relax slightly. This is really good, Mira said, then looked up at Luna with those 2 old eyes. Are you going to call Miss Jenkins in the morning? Luna had been asking herself the same question for the past hour. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to contact the authorities first thing and get Mira back into the system where she belonged. But looking at this child who'd been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect her, Luna couldn't bring herself to promise that. We'll figure something out, she said instead. Mira nodded, accepting this non-answer with the resignation of someone who'd learned not to push for guarantees. She took another bite of pizza, then closed her eyes and whispered something so softly Luna almost missed it. Thank you, God, for Luna and for this food and for feeling safe tonight. Please watch over Daddy and Mama in heaven, and help me be good so maybe someone will want to keep me someday. The words were simple, innocent, the kind of prayer any child might say. But as they left Myra's lips, something extraordinary happened. Luna felt it first, a wave of calm that started in her chest and spread outward like warm honey. The constant tension she carried, the predatory alertness that was as much a part of her as breathing, simply melted away. For a moment, she felt utterly at peace. But it wasn't just her. Through the pack bond that connected her to every werewolf in the territory, Luna felt the same sensation ripple outward. Kieran, who was probably prowling the warehouse district, suddenly stopped mid-stride. Sarah, hunting in the woods outside town, lifted her head in wonder. Even old Marcus, the grumpiest member of their pack, felt his usual irritation fade into something like contentment. 5 miles away, every werewolf in Luna's territory was touched by the same inexplicable sense of peace. Mira opened her eyes and smiled, the first real smile Luna had seen from her. I always feel better after I pray. Daddy taught me that talking to God helps, even when things are scary. Luna stared at the child, her mind racing. What had just happened? That prayer, that whisper, had somehow affected every supernatural being in the area. But Mira clearly had no idea anything unusual had occurred. To her, it was just a simple expression of faith and gratitude. That's a beautiful prayer, sweetheart. Mira yawned, the exhaustion finally catching up with her now that she'd eaten. I'm getting sleepy. Where should I sleep? Luna looked around her apartment again. She had 1 bedroom, 1 couch, and absolutely no experience with childhood logistics. You can take my bed. I don't sleep much anyway. I can sleep on the couch. I don't want to take your bed. Mira. Luna waited until the child looked at her. You're taking the bed. End of discussion. Something in Luna's tone, firm but kind, seemed to reassure Mira. She nodded and slid off the couch, still holding her father's photograph. Luna found an old t-shirt that would work as a nightgown for the child, then tucked her into bed. Mira looked impossibly small in the large bed, but her eyes were already drooping with exhaustion. Luna? Myra's voice was barely a whisper. Are you going to be here in the morning? The question hit Luna like a punch to the gut. How many times had this child asked that question? How many times had the answer been no? I'll be here, Luna said, and meant it. Mira smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. Luna stood in the doorway, watching this small stranger who had somehow turned her entire world upside down in the span of a few hours. Through the pack bond, she could feel the others, confused, curious, drawn to something they couldn't name. They'd have questions. Kieran especially would want answers she didn't have. But as she looked at Mira sleeping peacefully for what was probably the first time in months, Luna realized she didn't care about pack politics or supernatural mysteries. All that mattered was the promise she'd just made to a grieving child. She'd figure out the rest tomorrow. Chapter 3. Marcus Grimm had been tracking supernatural anomalies for 15 years, and he'd never seen readings like these. His equipment, a collection of modified EMF detectors, infrared scanners, and devices of his own creation, had been going haywire since he'd arrived in the sleepy town of Millbrook 3 days ago. Something powerful was here. Something that was affecting the local supernatural population in ways that defied everything he understood about werewolf behavior. Marcus adjusted the sensitivity on his main detector as he walked through the downtown area. The reading spiked and dipped without pattern, as if whatever he was tracking could appear and disappear at will. But it wasn't moving, that much he was certain of. The source was stationary, somewhere in the residential district. He'd come here following reports from his network of informants. Werewolves behaving strangely. Territorial disputes suddenly ending. Packs that had been at each other's throats for years calling temporary truces for no apparent reason. It all pointed to some kind of supernatural influence, something that could affect werewolf psychology on a massive scale. Marcus had theories, of course. Ancient artifacts sometimes surfaced with the power to influence shapeshifters. Rogue witches occasionally developed spells that could manipulate pack dynamics. But this felt different. More organic. More innocent, somehow. His phone buzzed with a text from one of his contacts in the area. Saw 3 werewolves heading toward Elm Street last night. They looked like they were being called to something. Marcus checked his map. Elm Street was 6 blocks away, well within the range his equipment had been detecting the anomaly. He headed in that direction, his hand unconsciously moving to the silver knife concealed beneath his jacket. Meanwhile, across town, Luna was discovering that having a child in her life meant very little sleep and a lot of worrying. She'd spent most of the night checking on Mira, listening to the soft sounds of her breathing, ready to comfort her if the nightmares came. But Mira had slept peacefully, and Luna had used the quiet hours to think. About the pack. About the strange effect Myra's prayer had caused. About the impossible situation she'd put herself in by caring for a human child. Her phone had been buzzing all morning with texts from pack members. Kieran, especially, seemed agitated. Need to talk. Something happened last night. Where are you? Pack meeting tonight. Luna, this is important. Call me. She ignored the messages. Whatever Kieran wanted to discuss could wait. Mira was awake now, sitting at Luna's small kitchen table in the oversized t-shirt, her father's photograph propped against the salt shaker while she ate the cereal Luna had hastily purchased during an early morning grocery run. Is this your family? Mira asked, pointing to a framed photograph on the kitchen counter. It showed Luna with Sarah, Kieran, and 3 other pack members, taken during a rare moment of pack harmony last summer. Something like that, Luna said carefully. They're close friends. Mira studied the picture with the intensity children brought to understanding the adult world. They look nice. Do they know about me? Luna poured herself coffee, buying time. Not yet. But I'm sure they'll like you. The truth was more complicated. Luna had no idea how to explain Mira to the pack, or how to explain the pack to Mira. Werewolf social dynamics didn't exactly accommodate human children, especially not human children who seemed to have mysterious effects on supernatural beings. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Luna's enhanced hearing had already identified the visitor, Kieran, and he didn't sound happy. "Stay here, sweetheart," Luna told Mira. "I need to talk to my friend for a minute." She opened the door to find Kieran looking more agitated than she'd seen him in years. His usually controlled demeanor had cracks in it, and his dark eyes held a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "What the hell happened last night?" Luna stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "Good morning to you too, Kieran." "Don't." His voice was sharp. "Luna, every werewolf in the territory felt something last night. A compulsion. A call. Sarah said it was like someone was pulling her toward this address. Even Marcus felt it, and you know how stubborn he is about pack bonds." Luna's stomach dropped. So it hadn't just been the sense of peace she'd felt. Myra's prayer had somehow called to every werewolf in the area. Maybe there was some kind of atmospheric. Cut the bullshit. Kieran stepped closer, and Luna caught the scent of his agitation, sharp and wild. "This isn't weather. This isn't some random supernatural event. This is coming from inside your apartment." Before Luna could respond, Myra's voice drifted through the door. "Luna? Is everything okay?" Kieran's eyes widened. "You have a human in there. A child. Kieran. Are you out of your mind?" His voice rose, and Luna quickly shushed him. "Luna, we don't involve humans. Ever. It's the first rule of pack survival." She needed help. "And that's admirable, but you call social services, you don't bring her home." Kieran ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Luna recognized as his attempt to control his temper. "This child, whatever she is, she's affecting us. All of us. Sarah couldn't control her wolf form last night. She shifted involuntarily in response to whatever signal this kid is putting out." Luna felt ice form in her stomach. "Is Sarah okay?" "She's fine, but that's not the point. The point is we have a human child who can somehow compel werewolves. Do you understand how dangerous that is? How exposed it makes us? She's 8 years old, Kieran. She's not compelling anyone to do anything. Then explain last night. Explain why Marcus is sitting in his truck 2 blocks away, claiming he doesn't know why he drove here but he couldn't turn around." Luna's blood ran cold. Old Marcus was the most independent member of their pack, the least susceptible to any kind of outside influence. If even he had been affected. "Look," Kieran continued, his voice gentler now. "I know you care about this kid. But we have to think about the pack. About our safety. If word gets out that there's something here that can influence werewolves." A new sound interrupted him. Crying. Not the soft, tired sobs Luna had heard at the cemetery, but the sharp, terrified wails of a child in the grip of a nightmare. Luna burst through the door with Kieran close behind. They found Mira on the kitchen floor, the photograph clutched to her chest, her eyes wide with terror even though she was clearly still asleep. "Daddy," she cried out, her voice echoing through the apartment. "Don't go. Please don't leave me. I'll be good, I promise I'll be good." Luna dropped to her knees beside the child, but before she could touch her, Myra's voice changed. Still sleeping, still trapped in whatever nightmare held her, she began to whisper. "Please help," she said, her voice carrying that same pure, heartbreaking quality that had first stopped Luna in her tracks. "Someone please help. I'm so scared. I don't want to be alone anymore." The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Through the pack bond, Luna felt every werewolf in the city suddenly turn toward her apartment. Not just her pack, every werewolf within miles felt the irresistible pull of that terrified whisper. Kieran staggered, his hand going to his chest as if the pull was physical. "Luna," he gasped. "Make it stop. She's calling them all here." Luna gathered Mira into her arms, shaking her gently. "Mira, honey, wake up. You're safe. Wake up for me." Myra's eyes snapped open, the whispers stopping abruptly. She looked around in confusion, taking in Luna's worried face and the stranger standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, the automatic apology that broke Luna's heart. "I had a bad dream. I didn't mean to be loud." "You weren't loud, sweetheart," Luna said softly, though she could hear car doors slamming outside. They were coming. Every werewolf in the area was coming, drawn by a frightened child's unconscious call for help. Kieran moved to the window, his face grim. "Luna, we have about 2 minutes before this place is surrounded by every supernatural creature in the city. And I guarantee some of them won't be friendly." Luna looked down at Mira, who was still blinking away the remnants of sleep, completely unaware that her nightmare had just sent out what amounted to a supernatural distress signal. "What do we do?" she asked. Kieran's expression was torn between loyalty to his alpha and genuine fear. "I don't know. But Luna, whatever this child is, whatever power she has, we can't control it. And if we can't control it..." He didn't need to finish. Luna understood. If they couldn't control Myra's ability, then Mira would always be a threat to every werewolf she encountered. And werewolves dealt with threats in very predictable ways. Outside, Luna could hear the sound of approaching footsteps. Her pack was coming, but so were others. And somewhere in the growing crowd, she knew, there would be those who saw Mira not as a frightened child but as a weapon that needed to be eliminated. Luna tightened her hold on Mira and prepared to protect the one person who had somehow become more important to her than her own survival. The first werewolf to arrive was Sarah, Luna's most trusted pack member after Kieran. She appeared at the door looking dazed and confused, her usually composed features tight with anxiety. "Luna?" Sarah's voice was uncertain. I had to come here. I couldn't stop myself. What's happening?" Before Luna could answer, more footsteps echoed in the hallway. Then more. The building was filling with werewolves, all drawn by Myra's unconscious call for help. Mira looked around at the strange faces appearing in the doorway, and Luna felt her small body tense with fear. "Luna, who are all these people?" "Friends," Luna said firmly, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true anymore. "They're here to help." Marcus appeared next, his weathered face creased with confusion and something that might have been wonder. Behind him came 2 werewolves Luna didn't recognize, members of other packs who had never set foot in her territory before. "The child," Marcus said, his gravelly voice soft with amazement. "It's the child, isn't it? She's the one calling to us." Kieran stepped between the growing crowd and Luna. "Everyone needs to calm down and back away. The child is under Luna's protection." "Is she?" The voice belonged to Vincent Torres, alpha of the North Side pack and Luna's occasional rival. He pushed through the crowd, his dark eyes fixed on Mira with an intensity that made Luna's protective instincts flare. "Because it seems to me that a human child who can compel werewolves against their will is everyone's concern." Luna stood slowly, keeping Mira behind her. "She's not compelling anyone. She's a frightened child who had a nightmare. A nightmare that drew every werewolf in the city to this location," Vincent countered. "Do you understand what that means? What she could do if she learned to control it?" Marcus stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Myra's face. "I've been hunting supernatural anomalies for half a century. I've never encountered anything like this. The child doesn't even know what she's doing, does she?" "She's 8 years old," Luna said through gritted teeth. "She doesn't know anything except that she misses her dead parents." "Which makes her even more dangerous," Vincent said. "Untrained power is unpredictable power. She could accidentally call every werewolf in the state. She could force us to transform. She could." "She could what?" Myra's small voice cut through the argument. She stepped out from behind Luna, still clutching her father's photograph, her chocolate-brown eyes wide as she looked around at the assembled werewolves. "I don't understand what you're talking about. What did I do wrong?" The room fell silent. Luna watched as every werewolf present struggled with the same thing she had. How do you explain supernatural politics to a child who just wanted someone to care about her? It was Sarah who broke the silence, kneeling down to Myra's level with a gentle smile. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. We're just worried about you. Because I don't have anywhere to go? Myra's voice was small, resigned. Miss Jenkins says there are lots of kids like me. Kids nobody wants. Luna felt something crack inside her chest at those words. She was vaguely aware of similar reactions from the other pack members, Marcus clearing his throat roughly, Sarah's eyes filling with tears, even Vincent looking uncomfortable. That's not. Sarah started, then stopped, clearly struggling with how to explain. Marcus surprised everyone by speaking next. Child, he said in his gruff voice, what's your name? Mira Patterson. She held up the photograph. This is my daddy. He was a soldier. Marcus studied the photograph with the same intensity he brought to everything. A good soldier, I'd wager. He looks like a man who knew how to protect what mattered to him. Mira nodded eagerly. He saved his friends. Mama said he was a hero. I'm sure he was. Marcus looked up at Luna, and she saw something shifting in his expression. Luna, may I speak with you privately? Luna hesitated, unwilling to leave Mira surrounded by so many strangers. But Sarah settled beside the child, engaging her in quiet conversation about the photograph, and Kieran positioned himself protectively nearby. Marcus led Luna to the far corner of the room, his voice low when he spoke. That child's father, what did you say his last name was? Patterson. Why? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face thoughtful. I knew a Patterson once. Military family. There were rumors about them. Old bloodlines. Ancient connections to our kind. Luna felt ice form in her stomach. What kind of connections? The kind that might explain why a human child can affect werewolves the way she does. Marcus glanced back at Mira, who was showing Sarah her father's photograph. There are old stories, Luna. Legends about humans who were born with the ability to speak to our kind. Not control us, exactly, but communicate in ways that bypass normal barriers. You're saying Mira is some kind of... I'm saying she might be the descendant of people who once served as bridges between our world and theirs. Marcus's voice was careful, measured. If that's true, then her abilities aren't a threat, they're a gift. One that could benefit both our kinds. Before Luna could respond, a new commotion at the door drew their attention. A man in a dark jacket was pushing through the crowd of werewolves, his hand moving towards something concealed beneath his coat. Marcus Grimm had finally tracked the source of the supernatural anomaly to its origin, and what he found defied every expectation he'd had. Not an ancient artifact or a rogue witch, but a small child sitting in a room full of werewolves, completely unafraid and apparently unaware of the power she wielded. His hunter instincts screamed danger, but as he watched Mira Patterson show her father's photograph to a werewolf who was listening with genuine interest, Marcus found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about supernatural threats. The child looked up at him with curious brown eyes. Are you Luna's friend too? Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, his hands still hovering near his concealed weapon. Every werewolf in the room had gone very still, sensing the potential threat he represented. But the child just waited patiently for his answer, as if she'd asked him about the weather. Marcus swallowed hard, meeting those innocent eyes. Yes. I suppose I am. And in that moment, looking at Mira Patterson's trusting smile, Marcus Grimm realized that everything he'd believed about monsters and humans and the lines between them might need to be reconsidered. The hunter had found his quarry. He just wasn't sure what to do with her anymore. Chapter 4. 3 days had passed since the incident at Luna's apartment, and nothing felt normal anymore. Luna stood at her bedroom window, watching Mira play with a small collection of toys Sarah had quietly delivered, a worn teddy bear, some coloring books, and a set of colored pencils that had transformed Luna's sterile coffee table into an explosion of childhood creativity. She should be hunting. The pack needed her leadership, her presence in the territory. But every time she tried to leave for more than an hour, she found herself making excuses to return. To check on Mira. To make sure she was safe, fed, comfortable. Luna had lived for 3 centuries without ever feeling this constant pull toward another being. Even her pack bonds, strong as they were, had never created this kind of, what was it exactly? Worry? Protectiveness? Something deeper, more fundamental, that she didn't have words for. Luna? Myra's soft voice drew her attention. The child was looking up from her coloring book, a purple crayon in her hand. Are you okay? You look sad. Luna settled beside her on the couch, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. I'm fine, sweetheart. What are you drawing? Myra held up the coloring book page, a picture of a house with flowers in the yard. She'd colored it carefully, staying mostly within the lines, using cheerful yellows and pinks for the flowers. But in the windows of the house, she'd drawn small figures in pencil. That's me and Daddy and Mama, Myra explained, pointing to each figure. Before everything got sad. We had a house with a yard, and Mama grew flowers. She said flowers were like smiles for the earth. Luna's chest tightened. It sounds like a wonderful place. It was. Myra set down her crayon and looked at Luna with those 2 old eyes. Do you have a family? Besides your friends who came to visit? The question caught Luna off guard. How did she explain 3 centuries of solitary existence to an 8-year-old? How did she talk about the family she'd lost when she was turned, the human life she'd left behind so long ago it felt like someone else's memory? I had a family once, Luna said carefully. A long time ago. What happened to them? Luna was quiet for a moment, remembering. They died. There was a sickness that came through our town, and they couldn't fight it off. It wasn't entirely a lie. The plague that had swept through her village in 1724 had taken her parents, her younger brother, everyone she'd ever loved. It was only after she'd lost everything that she'd been careless enough to be caught alone by the werewolf who'd turned her. Were you sad? Myra asked. Very sad. I thought the sadness would never go away. Myra nodded solemnly. That's how I feel about Daddy and Mama. Like there's a hole inside me that hurts all the time. Luna looked at this small, wise child and felt something shift inside her chest. You know what I learned, though? The hole never really goes away, but it changes. Instead of just hurting, it becomes a place where you keep all the love you had for them. All the good memories. Really? Really? Would you like me to tell you about my family? About the good memories I keep in that place? Myra's face lit up with interest, and she scooted closer to Luna on the couch. Yes, please. So Luna began to talk. About her mother, who had been the village healer and had taught Luna about herbs and kindness. About her father, a blacksmith who had been gentle despite his strength and who had sung old songs while he worked. About her brother Thomas, barely 6 when he died, who had collected smooth stones from the river and believed they were magic. As she spoke, Luna realized she hadn't thought about these people, really thought about them, in decades. She'd buried the memories so deep that they'd almost ceased to exist. But talking to Myra brought them back, vivid and precious and surprisingly pain-free. They sound nice, Myra said when Luna finished. I bet they loved you a lot. They did. Just like your parents loved you. Myra was quiet for a moment, then said, sometimes I forget what Daddy's voice sounded like. That scares me more than anything. Luna's heart ached for her. Tell me what you do remember about him. He used to sing to me when I had bad dreams. And he always smelled like soap and coffee in the mornings. And when he hugged me, I felt like nothing bad could ever happen. Myra's voice grew wistful. He said I was his brave girl, and that being brave didn't mean you weren't scared. It meant you did the right thing even when you were scared. Your daddy sounds like a very smart man. He was. I just miss him so much it feels like my chest is breaking. Luna pulled Myra close without thinking, and the child nestled against her side like it was the most natural thing in the world. I know, sweetheart. I know. They sat together in comfortable silence, and Luna found herself thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. 3 days ago, she'd been a predator with carefully controlled emotions and a solitary existence. Now she was cuddling on her couch with a human child, sharing memories she'd thought were buried forever. The strangest part was how right it felt. That evening, after Mira had eaten dinner and settled in for the night, Luna finally ventured out for her first real hunt since bringing the child home. But she found herself distracted, constantly checking her phone, her enhanced hearing straining for any sound from her apartment building. She was crouched behind a dumpster, tracking the scent of a drug dealer who'd been using werewolf territory to conduct business, when her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Everything okay? You seem different lately." Luna stared at the message, trying to figure out how to respond. Different didn't begin to cover it. She felt like she was becoming someone new, someone she didn't entirely recognize. Someone who cared more about a child's nightmares than pack politics. Before she could reply, her enhanced hearing picked up a sound that made her blood run cold. Mira, crying out in her sleep. The apartment was 6 blocks away, but Luna's supernatural senses carried the sound clearly. "Daddy. Don't go. Please don't leave me." Luna abandoned her hunt immediately, racing through the streets with inhuman speed. She burst into her apartment to find Mira thrashing in the bed, caught in the grip of another nightmare. "Mira, wake up," Luna said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You're safe. I'm here." Myra's eyes snapped open, wide with terror. "Luna? I dreamed Daddy came back, but then he had to leave again and I couldn't make him stay." "Oh, sweetheart." Luna gathered the child into her arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. "It was just a dream. You're safe." "I know he can't really come back," Mira whispered against Luna's shoulder. "But in the dreams, it feels so real. And then I wake up and he's gone all over again." Luna held her tighter, remembering her own dreams in the early days after her transformation. Dreams where her family was still alive, where the plague had never come, where she was still human and still loved. The waking up had been the worst part. "Would it help if I stayed with you tonight?" Luna asked. Mira nodded, and Luna settled beside her on the bed, keeping one arm around the child's small form. She'd never shared a bed with anyone, human or otherwise. But as Myra's breathing gradually evened out and she fell back into peaceful sleep, Luna found herself thinking that this was perhaps the most right she'd ever felt. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus Grimm was conducting his own investigation. But instead of tracking supernatural anomalies, he found himself drawn to Riverside Cemetery, the place where Luna had first encountered Mira. What he discovered there challenged every assumption he'd made about the source of the supernatural disturbances. The cemetery wasn't empty. Even at midnight, there were people there. A middle-aged woman sitting beside a fresh grave, talking quietly to the headstone. An elderly man placing flowers on a plot that looked decades old. A teenage boy reading aloud from what looked like a school report. All of them had the same expression Marcus had seen on every face in Luna's apartment 3 days ago, a kind of peace that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep inside them. Marcus approached the middle-aged woman carefully. "Excuse me. I'm sorry to bother you, but do you come here often?" She looked up at him with eyes that were sad but somehow not despairing. "Every night for the past week. I don't know why, exactly. I just feel like I should be here. Like this is where I can talk to my husband without all the noise of the world getting in the way." "Your husband? He died in a car accident 6 months ago. I've been so angry, so lost. But coming here, it's the only place I feel like he can hear me. Like we're still connected somehow." Marcus moved on to the elderly man, who shared a similar story. His wife of 50 years had passed the previous month, and he'd been coming to the cemetery every night since discovering it gave him the only real comfort he'd felt since her death. The teenage boy was even more interesting. "I don't know why I keep coming here," he admitted. "My mom died when I was little, and she's not even buried here. But there's something about this place, it makes me feel like she's not really gone, you know? Like love doesn't just disappear when someone dies." As Marcus made his way through the cemetery, he began to understand what was happening. These people weren't being compelled to come here by some supernatural force. They were being drawn by something much more fundamental, the simple human need to grieve, to remember, to feel connected to the people they'd lost. But somehow, this place had become a sanctuary for that need. A space where grief could exist without despair, where love could survive death, where the act of remembering was healing instead of devastating. Marcus found himself thinking about Mira Patterson, about the pure, heartbroken prayer that had first affected every werewolf in the area. Not magic, he realized. Not some ancient bloodline or supernatural ability. Just the most human thing of all, a child's love for her father, so genuine and powerful that it created ripples of peace wherever she went. The girl wasn't controlling supernatural beings. She was reminding them what it felt like to love without condition, to grieve without shame, to hope without guarantee. Marcus had spent 15 years hunting monsters. But as he stood in that peaceful cemetery, surrounded by people finding comfort in their sorrow, he began to wonder if he'd been wrong about what made something monstrous. Back in Luna's apartment, Mira stirred in her sleep and whispered a prayer so soft that only Luna's enhanced hearing could catch it. "Thank you for Luna, Daddy. I think you sent her to take care of me. Please help her not be sad anymore too." Luna felt tears slide down her cheeks as she held the sleeping child closer. For 3 centuries, she'd believed that becoming a monster meant giving up her humanity. But lying here in the dark, protecting the most human person she'd ever met, Luna began to understand that maybe the opposite was true. Maybe monsters became human again when they remembered how to love. Chapter 5. Luna had never realized how much information about a person's life could be found online until she started searching for details about Myra's family. What had begun as a simple desire to understand the child's background had become something deeper, a need to piece together the story of how such a bright, loving little girl had ended up alone and forgotten by the world. The first article she found made her stomach clench with a familiar ache. Staff Sergeant David Patterson, 29, of Millbrook, was killed in action while serving with the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan. Patterson died heroically when he threw himself on an improvised explosive device to shield his fellow soldiers from the blast. His actions saved the lives of 7 men in his unit. Luna stared at the accompanying photograph, a younger version of the man in Myra's treasured picture, wearing dress blues and looking impossibly young and proud. The article continued with quotes from his commanding officer, calling him the kind of soldier who put others before himself without hesitation, and a man who embodied the very best of what it means to serve. But it was the final paragraph that made Luna's breath catch. Patterson is survived by his wife, Rebecca, and daughter, Mira, age 5. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations be made to the Gold Star Families Foundation. Luna did the math quickly. 3 years. Mira had been without her father for 3 years, and without her mother for 3 months. In that time, she'd been shuffled between relatives who saw her as a burden, placed in foster care with people who couldn't handle her grief, and finally ended up on the streets because no one knew how to love a child who'd lost everything. The research into Rebecca Patterson's death was harder to stomach. Luna found the obituary buried in the local newspaper's online archives, a brief, sterile paragraph that mentioned she'd died after a long struggle with depression and substance abuse. No mention of a hero's widow who couldn't find a way to live without the love of her life. No acknowledgement of a mother who'd tried to numb the pain until it finally consumed her. Luna closed her laptop and looked across the room at Mira, who was curled up on the couch reading one of the children's books Sarah had brought her. The afternoon light streaming through the window caught the gold highlights in her dark hair, and she looked so peaceful, so safe, that Luna felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. How had the world failed this child so completely? "Luna?" Mira looked up from her book. "You look upset. Did something bad happen?" Luna forced a smile. "No, sweetheart. I was just thinking about some grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." Mira studied her with those wise brown eyes. "Are you sure? Sometimes when adults say grown-up stuff, it's really about me." The perceptiveness of the observation hit Luna like a physical blow. How many conversations had Mira overheard about her future, her problems, her inconvenient existence? How many times had she been discussed like a problem to be solved rather than a child to be loved? "Come here," Luna said, patting the cushion beside her. Mira abandoned her book and curled up next to Luna, automatically nestling into the curve of her arm. The gesture had become so natural over the past week that Luna couldn't remember what it felt like to sit alone on her couch. "I was reading about your daddy," Luna said gently. "About what happened when he died." Myra's body tensed slightly. "Oh. He was very brave. He saved a lot of people." "I know." Myra's voice was small. "Everyone always tells me that. But sometimes I just wish he hadn't been so brave. I wish he'd come home instead." Luna's chest tightened. "That's not selfish, sweetheart. It's human. You loved him, and you wanted him with you. That's the most natural thing in the world. Mama said I couldn't think like that. She said Daddy was a hero and I had to be proud of him. You can be both. You can be proud of him and still wish things had been different." Mira was quiet for a moment, then said, "Mama tried to be brave too, but I think she was too sad. She kept saying she was sorry, that she couldn't be the mama I deserved without Daddy there to help her." Luna felt tears burn behind her eyes. She understood Rebecca Patterson's pain with a clarity that was almost unbearable. The crushing weight of being left behind, of having to carry on when the person who made life worth living was gone. "What happened after your mama went to heaven?" Luna asked carefully. "Aunt Caroline took me first. She's Mama's sister. But she said I looked too much like Mama and it made her cry all the time. Then I went to live with Uncle Frank, that's Daddy's brother, but his wife didn't like having me there. She said I was too quiet and it made her nervous." Mira recited these rejections with the matter-of-fact tone of a child who'd learned not to take abandonment personally, and it broke Luna's heart into pieces. Then there was the foster family, the Hendersons. They were nice, but they had 4 other foster kids and Mrs. Henderson said she didn't have time to help me with my nightmares. And then there was another family, but they wanted a baby, not a big kid like me. "You're not a big kid," Luna said firmly. "You're 8 years old. You're supposed to be someone's little girl. Miss Jenkins says some kids just have a harder time finding the right family. She says it's not my fault, but..." Mira shrugged, a gesture that tried to be casual but fell far short. Luna pulled her closer, marveling at how this child could be so understanding of the adults who'd failed her while still carrying the weight of believing she was somehow to blame. "Mira," Luna said, her voice thick with emotion. "Listen to me very carefully. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not too sad, or too quiet, or too much of anything. You are a little girl who lost the 2 most important people in your life, and you deserve adults who understand that and want to help you heal." Mira looked up at her with eyes that held more hope than Luna had seen since the cemetery. "Do you think there are grown-ups like that?" "I know there are," Luna said, and meant it. They sat together in comfortable silence, and Luna found herself thinking about her own family's death. The plague that had swept through her village had been swift and merciless, taking her parents and Thomas within days of each other. She'd been 18, barely more than a child herself, and utterly unprepared for the crushing weight of survival guilt. Why had she lived when they died? What was the point of continuing when everyone she loved was gone? Those were the thoughts that had led her to be careless, to walk alone in the woods at night without caring what found her there. The werewolf who'd turned her had thought he was giving her a gift, immortality, power, freedom from human fragility. He'd been wrong about the gift part. But he'd been right about one thing: the transformation had numbed the pain. For 3 centuries, Luna had existed without feeling the full weight of loss, protected by the emotional barriers that came with her supernatural nature. Until Mira. Looking at this child who was somehow surviving the same devastating losses that had nearly destroyed Luna centuries ago, Luna felt a respect and admiration that went deeper than anything she'd ever experienced. Mira was facing her grief with more courage at 8 years old than Luna had managed at 18. A sharp knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Luna's enhanced hearing identified the visitor immediately, Kieran, and he wasn't happy. "Stay here, sweetheart," Luna told Mira, who nodded and picked up her book again. Luna opened the door to find Kieran standing in the hallway, his usual controlled demeanor cracked with frustration and worry. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Now." Luna stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Kieran's voice rose, then dropped as he remembered they were in a building full of humans. "Luna, you've missed 3 pack meetings in the past week. You haven't been on patrol in 5 days. Vincent's pack is testing our boundaries because they think we're weak, and our own members are starting to question your leadership." Luna felt a stab of guilt. She hadn't realized how much of her attention had shifted away from pack responsibilities. "I'll handle Vincent." "When? Between bedtime stories and grocery shopping?" Kieran's tone was sharp with frustration. "Luna, I understand that you care about this child. We all do, after what happened the other night. But you're the alpha. The pack needs you. The pack is fine." "No, we're not." Kieran stepped closer, his voice intense. "Sarah's been covering for you, telling everyone you're handling sensitive pack business. Marcus has been doing extra patrols to make up for your absence. And I've been fielding questions from every pack member about when you're coming back." Luna felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She'd worked for decades to build her pack's strength and unity. She couldn't let it fall apart now. But the thought of stepping back from Mira, of returning to her old patterns of emotional detachment, made her chest ache in ways she hadn't felt since her transformation. "I know you think you can balance this," Kieran continued, his voice gentler now. "But Luna, you're not thinking clearly. This child, she's changing you. And not necessarily for the better." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're acting like a human instead of a werewolf. You're making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. You're putting one child's needs above the survival of your entire pack." The words hit Luna like a slap. Mira isn't just one child. To us, she is. Kieran's voice was firm but not unkind. "Luna, I get it. Really, I do. She's special. She affects us all in ways we don't understand. But you can't sacrifice everything you've built for her." Luna stared at her second-in-command, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes. Kieran wasn't being cruel or selfish. He was being practical, looking out for the pack the way a good beta should. The problem was that Luna couldn't imagine going back to the way things were before. The thought of treating Mira like a temporary responsibility, of finding her a placement and walking away, felt like tearing out her own heart. "What if I can't do both?" she asked quietly. "What if choosing the pack means losing her?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment. "Then you have to decide what matters more. Your duty to the pack you've led for 50 years, or your feelings for a human child you've known for a week." Before Luna could respond, Myra's voice called through the door. "Luna? Are you okay out there?" The sound of that small, worried voice made Luna's decision crystal clear. She might be the alpha of a werewolf pack, but she was also the only person standing between Mira Patterson and a world that had already failed her too many times. "I'll find a way to do both," Luna said firmly. "But I'm not abandoning her." Kieran's expression was a mixture of frustration and resignation. "And if you can't? If it comes down to a choice?" Luna met his eyes steadily. "Then I choose her." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Kieran nodded slowly, as if he'd expected this answer even while hoping for a different one. "Then we'd better hope it doesn't come to that," he said quietly. "Because the pack won't understand. And neither will Vincent when he realizes our alpha's priorities have shifted." As Kieran walked away, Luna stood in the hallway feeling the weight of 2 worlds pressing down on her shoulders. Inside her apartment, Mira was waiting with complete trust that Luna would always come back, always be there, always choose her. The child had no idea that her safety might come at the cost of everything else Luna had built. But as Luna opened the door and saw Myra's face light up with relief, she knew she'd made the right choice. Some things were worth any sacrifice. Some people were worth becoming human again. Chapter 6. Marcus Grimm sat in his rental car across the street from Luna's apartment building, watching her kitchen window through high-powered binoculars. For the past 3 days, he'd been conducting surveillance, trying to understand what he'd witnessed in that crowded apartment the week before. What he'd seen shouldn't have been possible. A room full of werewolves sitting peacefully with a human child, their usual territorial aggression completely absent. And the child, Mira Patterson, treating them like they were simply Luna's friends, unaware that any one of them could have killed her without a second thought. But it was Luna herself who puzzled Marcus the most. He'd been hunting supernatural predators for 15 years, and he'd learned to recognize the signs. The controlled movements, the predatory awareness, the careful emotional distance they maintained from humans. Luna displayed all of these traits, marking her clearly as a werewolf. Yet watching her through the window as she helped Mira with what looked like homework, Marcus saw something that challenged everything he thought he knew about her kind. She moved with a gentleness he'd never witnessed in a supernatural being. She smiled, actually smiled, at something the child said. When Mira leaned against her while reading, Luna's entire posture softened in a way that spoke of genuine affection. Marcus lowered his binoculars and rubbed his eyes, trying to push away the memory that was clawing at his chest. Emma. His daughter Emma, who would have been about Myra's age if she'd lived past her 5th birthday. Emma, who'd died of leukemia while Marcus was overseas on a hunting mission, chasing a vampire nest that had ultimately proven to be nothing more than a group of homeless people with unusual dietary habits. He'd missed her final weeks because he'd been so focused on eliminating what he'd believed was a supernatural threat. By the time he'd returned home, Emma was gone, and his wife had left him, unable to forgive his absence during their daughter's final days. That was when Marcus had thrown himself fully into hunting, channeling his grief and guilt into a crusade against anything supernatural. If he couldn't save his own child, at least he could protect other families from the monsters that lurked in the shadows. But now, watching Luna Blackthorne tuck a strand of hair behind Myra's ear with the tenderness of a mother, Marcus found his convictions wavering. This wasn't the behavior of a monster. This was the behavior of someone who loved a child. His phone buzzed with a text message, interrupting his thoughts. The number was unfamiliar, but the message made his blood run cold. Mr. Grimm, this is Jennifer Hawkins with Child Protective Services. I understand you've been asking questions about Mira Patterson. We need to meet. She's been missing for over a week, and we have reason to believe she may be in danger. Marcus stared at the message, his mind racing. Someone had connected his inquiries about the supernatural activity to the missing child. But how? He'd been careful to keep his investigation focused on the anomalous readings, not on Mira specifically. Unless someone else was watching Luna's building. Someone who'd seen him conducting surveillance and drawn their own conclusions. Before he could respond to the text, movement in the apartment window caught his attention. Luna was standing abruptly, her phone pressed to her ear, her expression tense. Even from across the street, Marcus could see the rigid set of her shoulders, the way her free hand clenched into a fist. She was talking rapidly, gesturing with obvious agitation. Mira looked up from her book, concern clear on her small face. Luna noticed the child's attention and forced a smile, but Marcus could see the strain behind it. The call ended, and Luna knelt beside Myra's chair, speaking to her in what appeared to be soothing tones. But her body language remained tense, coiled like a spring ready to snap. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another text from Jennifer Hawkins. I know you're watching the building on Elm Street. We need to talk before this situation gets out of hand. There are things about this case you don't understand. This time, Marcus's blood turned to ice. Someone had been watching him watch Luna. The careful distance he'd maintained from his target was meaningless if someone else was already closing in. He started his car and drove 3 blocks before pulling over to call the number from the text. A professional female voice answered on the second ring. Jennifer Hawkins. This is Marcus Grimm. I got your message. Mr. Grimm, thank you for calling. I understand you're a private investigator looking into some unusual activity in the area. I think we may be investigating the same situation from different angles. Marcus chose his words carefully. What situation would that be? The disappearance of Mira Patterson. She's been missing from her last foster placement for 8 days. We have reason to believe she's being held by someone in the building you've been watching. Held? Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. What makes you think she's not there voluntarily? There was a pause. Mr. Grimm, Mira is 8 years old. She can't consent to living with an unvetted adult. The woman in that apartment, Luna Blackthorne, has no legal right to keep her. We've been trying to locate Mira through proper channels, but someone's been interfering with our investigation. Marcus thought about what he'd witnessed through his binoculars. Mira curled up against Luna's side, completely relaxed and clearly content. The child reading peacefully while Luna worked on her laptop. The easy domesticity of their interactions. She didn't look like she was being held against her will, Marcus said carefully. Children who've been traumatized often bond with their captors, especially if those captors provide basic care and safety. It's a survival mechanism, not a sign of healthy attachment. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Was that what he'd been seeing? A traumatized child clinging to anyone who showed her kindness, mistaking captivity for care? But even as the thought formed, he rejected it. He'd seen genuine affection in that apartment window, mutual care that couldn't be faked or forced. Whatever was happening between Luna and Mira, it wasn't predatory. What do you want from me? Marcus asked. We need your help to retrieve the child safely. Our understanding is that Luna Blackthorne may be unstable. Possibly dangerous. We'd prefer to handle this without involving law enforcement if possible, but we need someone with your expertise to ensure Myra's safety during the intervention. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering Emma's laugh, the way she'd reached for him when she was scared or hurt. The way he'd failed to be there when she needed him most. I'll meet with you, he said finally. But I want to understand the full situation before I agree to anything. Of course. There's a coffee shop on 5th Street called Brewster's. Can you meet me there in an hour? I'll be there. Marcus ended the call and sat in his car, staring at Luna's building in the distance. Everything he believed about this situation was shifting, and he wasn't sure which version of reality to trust. Was Luna a supernatural predator who'd somehow convinced a traumatized child to trust her? Or was she something else entirely, a being who'd found her humanity through caring for someone who needed her? And if it was the latter, what did that mean for everything Marcus had built his life around? An hour later, Marcus found himself sitting across from a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and the sort of professional demeanor that came from years of dealing with bureaucracy and heartbreak. Jennifer Hawkins ordered black coffee and pulled out a thick file folder. Mira Patterson, she began, opening the folder to reveal school photos and case notes. Both parents deceased, multiple placement failures, last seen 8 days ago when she ran away from her current foster home. This isn't her first disappearance. She's been running away regularly since her mother's death 3 months ago. Marcus studied the photographs. Mira looked younger in the school pictures, but her eyes held the same old soul quality he'd noticed when he'd seen her in Luna's apartment. Where has she been running to? Usually the cemetery where her father's buried. That's where we expected to find her this time, but she wasn't there. Then we got a tip that someone had seen her with an unidentified woman in the Elm Street area. A tip from whom? Jennifer hesitated. That's classified. But our source was very specific about the woman, tall, dark hair, appears to be in her 30s. Living alone in apartment 4B at 1247 Elm Street. Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Someone had been feeding information to social services, someone who knew enough about Luna to identify her specifically. But who? And why? What do you know about Luna Blackthorne? Marcus asked. Very little, which is concerning in itself. She appears to have no close relationships, no family, no traditional employment. She pays her rent in cash and keeps to herself. The kind of profile that raises red flags when a missing child is involved. Marcus thought about the pack members who'd gathered in Luna's apartment, the obvious loyalty and respect they'd shown her. She definitely had relationships, just not ones that would show up in any government database. Have you considered that maybe Mira sought her out? That she might have needed help and Luna provided it? Jennifer's expression hardened. Mr. Grimm, I appreciate that you may want to see the best in people, but Mira is a vulnerable child who's been through tremendous trauma. Adults who take in stray children without going through proper channels usually have concerning motivations. The word stung because Marcus could hear an echo of his own assumptions. How many times had he approached a supernatural situation expecting the worst, looking for monsters where there might have been something else entirely? What's the plan? He asked. We go in tomorrow morning with a court order. Remove Mira from the apartment and place her in emergency care while we sort out what's been happening. We'd like you there as security, in case Ms. Blackthorne resists. Marcus nodded slowly, but his chest felt tight with uncertainty. And if Mira doesn't want to go? Children don't always know what's best for them. That's why we have systems in place to protect them. As Marcus left the coffee shop, Jennifer's words echoed in his mind. Systems in place to protect children. But what happened when those systems failed? What happened when a child fell through the cracks and found safety in an unexpected place? He drove back to Elm Street and resumed his surveillance, but this time he was looking for something different. Not evidence of supernatural activity, but signs of whether Mira was truly safe or just surviving. What he saw made his decision for him. Through the apartment window, he watched Luna help Mira with what appeared to be a bath, the child's laughter audible even through the glass when Luna apparently made some silly comment. Later, he saw them curled up together on the couch, Luna reading aloud while Mira followed along in her own book. But it was the moment when Mira had what appeared to be a nightmare that convinced Marcus completely. He watched Luna wake the child gently, hold her while she cried, and then stay with her until she fell back asleep. The tenderness in Luna's posture, the patience she showed, the obvious love, none of it could be faked. Whatever Luna Blackthorne was, whatever supernatural abilities she might possess, she was also someone who genuinely cared for a traumatized child. Someone who was giving Mira what the system had failed to provide, unconditional love and safety. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled to Jennifer Hawkins' number. But instead of calling, he deleted it. He had a choice to make. He could help social services remove Mira from what appeared to be the first stable situation she'd had since her parents' deaths. Or he could find a way to protect both the child and the woman who'd chosen to love her. For the first time in 15 years of hunting monsters, Marcus Grimm realized he might have found something worth protecting instead. The question was whether he could find a way to do it without destroying everything he'd built his life around. Chapter 7. Luna stared at the business card in her trembling hand for the third time in 10 minutes. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, licensed clinical social worker, specializing in trauma therapy for military families and war orphans. The card had been given to her by Father Michael O'Brien, the parish priest at St. Mary's, after Luna had made what might have been the most terrifying decision of her 3-century existence. She was going to tell the truth. Not the whole truth, she wasn't quite ready to announce her supernatural nature to the world, but enough of it to fight legally for Myra's custody. Even if it meant exposing herself and her pack to scrutiny they'd never faced before. Luna? Myra's voice came from the kitchen, where she was carefully coloring at the table. Are you okay? You've been staring at that card for a really long time. Luna forced a smile and tucked the card into her pocket. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about some important grown-up things. The lie tasted bitter in her mouth. Nothing about this was fine. Jennifer Hawkins had made it clear that social services would be coming for Mira soon, armed with court orders and the full weight of the legal system. Luna's only chance of keeping Mira safe was to get ahead of them, to present herself as a legitimate guardian before they could paint her as a kidnapper. But doing so meant creating a paper trail, submitting to background checks, opening her carefully constructed life to official scrutiny. It meant risking not just her own safety, but the safety of every member of her pack. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kieran. Pack meeting tonight. Vincent's been asking questions about your pet project. We need to discuss containment strategies. Luna closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Kieran was right to be concerned. The longer this situation dragged on, the more exposed they all became. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to take Mira and disappear. Find a new territory, start over somewhere else, keep the child away from anyone who might separate them. But that would mean a life of running, of constantly looking over their shoulders. It would mean Mira never having a real home, never forming lasting friendships, never having the stable childhood she deserved. Luna had lived that way for centuries, and she wouldn't condemn Mira to the same existence. Which left only one choice, no matter how terrifying it was. Luna picked up her phone and dialed the number on Dr. Rodriguez's card. 2 hours later, Luna sat in a warmly decorated office across from a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Dr. Rodriguez had the sort of calm presence that immediately put people at ease, and Luna found herself relaxing despite the gravity of the situation. "Thank you for coming in so quickly," Dr. Rodriguez said, pouring tea from a thermos into 2 ceramic cups. "Father O'Brien explained that you're in a rather urgent situation regarding a child in your care." Luna accepted the tea gratefully, using the warmth of the cup to steady her hands. "Her name is Mira Patterson. She's 8 years old, and both her parents are deceased. I found her, she was in a very bad situation, and I took her in temporarily. But now social services is looking for her, and I'm afraid they're going to place her somewhere that won't understand her needs." Dr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "Father O'Brien mentioned that Mira is a military child. That she lost her father in Afghanistan?" "Yes. Staff Sergeant David Patterson. He died saving his unit from an IED. Her mother." Luna's voice caught. Her mother struggled with depression and substance abuse after his death. She overdosed 3 months ago. And since then, Mira has been in the system? Multiple placements. None of them worked out. She keeps running away to her father's grave, trying to find some kind of peace. Luna set down her teacup with trembling hands. "Dr. Rodriguez, I know this looks bad. I know taking in a child without going through proper channels isn't legal. But she was starving and alone, and no one else was helping her." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about your relationship with Mira. How is she doing in your care?" Luna felt some of the tension leave her shoulders as she began to describe the past 2 weeks. Mira's gradual relaxation, the way her nightmares had decreased, how she'd started smiling again. The simple joy of watching her color or read, the way she'd begun to trust that Luna would always be there when she woke up. "She's healing," Luna said finally. "Slowly, but she's healing. And I love her. I know that might sound impossible after such a short time, but I do. She's become the most important thing in my life." Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, making notes in a leather-bound folder. "Luna, I have to ask, what's your background with children? Do you have experience with trauma recovery?" This was the moment Luna had been dreading. The moment where she had to construct a believable history without lying outright. "I've helped other families over the years. Informally. I seem to have a knack for connecting with children who've experienced loss." It wasn't entirely untrue. Over the decades, Luna had anonymously helped dozens of families, leaving groceries on doorsteps during hard times, paying medical bills for families who couldn't afford them, even arranging for scholarship funds to help children attend better schools. She'd never thought of it as building a resume for parenthood, but perhaps that's what it had been all along. "Can you provide references for this work?" Luna's heart sank. How could she provide references for help she'd given anonymously? Most of it was done privately. I preferred not to make a big deal about it." Dr. Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, then made another note. "Luna, I'm going to be honest with you. The legal system is designed to protect children, but it's not always equipped to recognize unconventional forms of love and care. What you've described, Mira's improvement in your care, your obvious attachment to her, these are positive signs. But we're going to need to build a strong case for why you should be considered as her guardian." "What would that involve?" "Home studies, background checks, character references, financial stability verification. And most importantly, we'd need to demonstrate that this arrangement is in Mira's best interests." Luna felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Dr. Rodriguez was describing. Each requirement was another opportunity for her carefully constructed human identity to fall apart under scrutiny. I know it seems daunting, Dr. Rodriguez continued gently. But Father O'Brien speaks very highly of you. He mentioned that you've been a quiet pillar of the community for years, helping families in need without seeking recognition. Luna looked up in surprise. He said that? He's been keeping track, apparently. Anonymous donations that always seemed to appear when families were struggling. Medical bills that mysteriously got paid. Children who received scholarships to attend summer camps or after-school programs. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Father O'Brien has a theory that all of these acts of kindness came from the same source. Would you care to confirm or deny? Luna felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd thought her help had gone unnoticed, that she'd been careful to leave no traces. But apparently, someone had been paying attention to the patterns. I don't know what you're talking about, Luna said quietly, but her voice lacked conviction. Dr. Rodriguez's smile widened. Of course not. But hypothetically, if someone had been providing this kind of community support for years, it would speak very well to their character and their commitment to child welfare. Over the next hour, Dr. Rodriguez explained the process they'd need to go through. Emergency custody paperwork that would give Luna temporary legal guardianship while the full evaluation was conducted. A therapist who specialized in military children who could work with Mira to document her progress. Character witnesses who could speak to Luna's fitness as a guardian. The most important thing, Dr. Rodriguez emphasized, is that we present this as what it actually is, a child finding safety and healing with someone who loves her unconditionally. The legal system may prefer traditional paths to guardianship, but it's ultimately supposed to serve the child's best interests. As Luna walked back to her apartment, her head spinning with forms to fill out and appointments to schedule, she found herself thinking about the conversation with a mixture of hope and terror. Dr. Rodriguez seemed genuinely committed to helping, but the process would expose Luna to more scrutiny than she'd ever faced. Her phone buzzed with another text from Kieran. Vincent's getting impatient. He's talking about taking matters into his own hands. We need to end this situation soon. Luna quickened her pace, suddenly desperate to get back to Mira. The child was the calm center of this brewing storm, the one person who saw Luna simply as someone who cared about her. No matter what happened with the pack, with social services, with the legal system, Luna was determined to protect that innocence. She climbed the stairs to her apartment and opened the door to find Mira curled up on the couch with a book, exactly where she'd left her. The child looked up with a smile that still had the power to stop Luna's breath. How did your important grown-up thing go? Mira asked. Luna sat beside her and pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the lingering smell of the crayons she'd been using earlier. It went well, sweetheart. I think we're going to be okay. Good, Mira said simply, settling against Luna's side with complete trust. I knew you'd figure it out. You always take care of everything. The faith in Myra's voice was both humbling and terrifying. Luna had no idea if she could actually protect this child from all the forces arrayed against them, but she was going to die trying. Outside, Marcus Grimm sat in his car, watching the apartment building and thinking about the choice he'd made. Instead of helping Jennifer Hawkins remove Mira, he'd spent the day conducting his own investigation into Luna Blackthorn's background. What he'd found had shaken him to his core. The anonymous donations Father O'Brien had mentioned were just the beginning. Marcus had traced a pattern of quiet generosity going back years, families whose rent had been mysteriously paid when they faced eviction, medical bills that disappeared overnight, children who received educational opportunities they never could have afforded. Luna Blackthorn had been protecting and helping people for years, asking for nothing in return, leaving no traces except the lives she'd improved. Marcus thought about his 15 years of hunting supernatural beings, driven by the belief that they were inherently dangerous to humans. But what did it mean when one of those beings had spent decades making human lives better? His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Jennifer Hawkins' number appeared on the screen. Grimm. Mr. Grimm, we've had a development in the Patterson case. Luna Blackthorn has filed for emergency custody. She's got a lawyer and a social worker advocating for her. Marcus felt relief flood through him. That sounds like good news. It means she's willing to work within the system. It means she's trying to legitimize what amounts to kidnapping. Jennifer's voice was sharp with frustration. We need to move faster than we planned. I'm getting a court order for tomorrow morning. Maybe you should slow down and consider whether removing Mira is actually in her best interests. Mr. Grimm, whose side are you on here? This woman has been harboring a missing child for 2 weeks. The fact that she's now trying to cover her tracks legally doesn't change that. Marcus closed his eyes, thinking about everything he'd witnessed and learned. I'm on the side of the child. And from what I've seen, she's safer and happier where she is than she's been since her parents died. The line was quiet for a long moment. Then Jennifer's voice came back, cold and professional. I see. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Grimm. We'll handle this without your assistance. The call ended, and Marcus sat in his car feeling the weight of another choice. He could walk away, let the system handle things as it saw fit. Or he could find a way to help protect the unexpected family he'd been watching. For the first time in 15 years, Marcus Grimm was going to fight for a monster instead of against one. Even if that monster had turned out to be more human than most humans he knew. Chapter 8. 1 year later. Luna stood at the kitchen window, watching Mira chase fireflies in the small backyard of their new house. The modest 2-bedroom home on Maple Street was a far cry from her sterile apartment, but it was perfect for a 9-year-old girl who needed room to grow and play. The moving boxes had been unpacked months ago, replaced by the comfortable clutter of a real home, Myra's artwork on the refrigerator, family photos on the mantel, and a basket of toys that somehow never quite made it back to the child's bedroom. She's gotten so tall, Sarah observed from her seat at the kitchen table, where she was helping Mira with a challenging homework assignment on fractions. Remember when we first met her? She looked so small and fragile. Luna smiled, remembering that terrifying night when Myra's nightmare had called every werewolf in the city to her apartment. Now Sarah came over twice a week to help with homework, having discovered she had a natural talent for explaining mathematics in ways that made sense to a child's mind. Dr. Rodriguez says she's thriving, Luna said, pouring coffee for both of them. Her anxiety levels are down, her nightmares have decreased significantly, and she's made 3 close friends at school. And how are you doing with the balancing act? Sarah asked gently. Luna considered the question as she settled into her chair. The past year had been a constant process of learning how to be both a pack alpha and a mother. There had been missed meetings when Mira was sick, abbreviated hunts when school events required her attention, and countless moments when she'd had to choose between pack responsibilities and her daughter's needs. Because that's what Mira was now, legally, officially, and most importantly, in her heart. The adoption papers had been finalized 6 months ago, and Mira Patterson had become Mira Blackthorne, complete with a birth certificate that listed Luna as her mother. Some days are harder than others, Luna admitted. But the pack has been more understanding than I expected. It was true. After the initial resistance, most of the pack members had embraced their alpha's new role. Marcus, old Marcus from the pack, not Marcus Grimm the hunter, had surprised everyone by becoming fiercely protective of Mira, often positioning himself as an unofficial bodyguard during pack gatherings. Kieran had taken on more day-to-day leadership responsibilities, allowing Luna to focus on the parts of pack management that required her specific attention. Even Vincent Torres had eventually come around, especially after Mira had innocently asked him about his motorcycle during a tense pack meeting, melting his gruff exterior with genuine curiosity and admiration. Speaking of the pack, Sarah said, Kieran wanted me to remind you about tomorrow night's territory patrol. The hunters who've been spotted near the eastern border. Luna nodded, though her stomach tightened slightly at the mention of hunters. Not all hunters were like Marcus Grimm, who had undergone his own transformation over the past year. Most were still very much a threat to her kind. I'll be there. Myra's sleeping over at her friend Jessica's house tomorrow night, so the timing works out. It's amazing how normal that sounds, Sarah mused. Our alpha arranging pack patrols around sleepovers. Luna laughed softly. Nothing about this situation is normal. But somehow, it works. The back door opened, and Mira bounded into the kitchen, her hair mussed and her cheeks flushed from running around outside. She'd grown 3 inches in the past year and lost 2 teeth, giving her a gap-toothed grin that never failed to make Luna's heart squeeze with affection. "Aunt Sarah." Mira threw her arms around Sarah's neck with the casual affection of a child who'd grown up surrounded by love. "Did you see how many fireflies I caught? I counted 12 before I let them go." 12. "That's a new record," Sarah said seriously, playing into Myra's excitement. "You're definitely getting faster." Mira plopped into the chair beside Luna, automatically reaching for the glass of milk that appeared at her place. The easy domesticity of the moment, homework spread across the table, the smell of dinner cooking in the oven, the comfortable chatter of family, still had the power to take Luna's breath away. "Luna," Mira said, her voice growing more serious, "can we talk about something?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Mira fidgeted with her napkin, a sure sign that she was working up to something important. "Tomorrow it's the anniversary of when Daddy died. I was wondering, would it be okay if we went to visit him?" Luna's chest tightened with familiar emotion. They'd visited David Patterson's grave several times over the past year, but always at Myra's request, never on the anniversary itself. Luna had been quietly dreading this day, unsure how Mira would handle the weight of such a significant date. "Of course we can go," Luna said gently. "Would you like it to be just us, or would you like Sarah to come too?" "Just us, please. I want to tell Daddy about my new family, and about how I'm doing in school, and about how you taught me to ride a bike." Myra's voice was steady, but Luna could see the emotion swimming in her brown eyes. "Is that silly?" "It's not silly at all," Luna assured her. "I think your daddy would love to hear about all of those things." Sarah squeezed Myra's hand across the table. "Your daddy would be so proud of the brave, smart girl you've become." Myra's smile was tremulous but genuine. "I think so too. And I want to tell him about you guys, about how I have a whole new family now who loves me. I think he'd be happy that I'm not alone anymore." Luna had to blink back tears at the matter-of-fact way Mira spoke about her grief and healing. The child had done the emotional work of processing her loss with Dr. Rodriguez's help, learning to carry her love for her parents alongside her love for her new family. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect autumn weather that painted the world in shades of gold and amber. Luna and Mira drove to Riverside Cemetery in comfortable silence, stopping to pick up fresh flowers from the shop where Luna had become a regular customer over the past year. David Patterson's grave was in the military section, marked by a simple headstone that bore his name, rank, and the dates that bracketed his too short life. Mira had insisted on bringing a small American flag to place beside the flowers, something she'd started doing after learning about Memorial Day in school. "Hi, Daddy," Mira said softly as they knelt beside the grave. "It's me, Mira. I brought Luna to meet you properly." Luna's throat tightened as she listened to Myra's one-sided conversation. The child talked about school, her friends, her new house, and the bike Luna had taught her to ride in the park. She described Sarah's patient help with homework, Marcus's stories about his own military service, and Kieran's promise to teach her how to change a tire when she was older. "I still miss you every day," Mira continued, her voice growing softer. "But I'm not scared anymore. Luna takes really good care of me, and she makes sure I'm safe and happy. I think you'd like her a lot, Daddy. She's brave like you were, and she helps people who need it." Luna found herself thinking about the past year, about how much they'd all changed. Not just Mira, who'd blossomed from a frightened, grieving child into a confident girl who knew she was loved. But Luna herself, who discovered that being needed by someone could transform her in ways she'd never imagined. The pack had changed too. They'd learned to accommodate a human child in their supernatural world, discovering that love could bridge differences they'd thought were insurmountable. Some of the younger pack members had even started volunteering at the local children's hospital, inspired by watching Luna care for Mira. "And Daddy," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible, "I want you to know that loving my new family doesn't mean I love you and Mama any less." Dr. Rodriguez explained that hearts don't have a limit on how much love they can hold. So I'm going to keep loving you forever, but I'm also going to love Luna and everyone else who takes care of me." The simple wisdom of a 9-year-old's understanding of love made Luna's eyes fill with tears. Mira had learned what it had taken Luna centuries to figure out, that love wasn't a finite resource, but something that grew stronger when it was shared. As they stood to leave, Mira surprised Luna by taking her hand and looking directly at the headstone. "Thank you for my daddy," she whispered, so softly that only Luna's enhanced hearing could catch the words. "And thank you for sending me Luna when I needed her most. I think you must have known she'd take good care of me." The prayer was simple, heartfelt, and full of gratitude instead of despair. As the words left Myra's lips, Luna felt that familiar sense of peace wash over her, not the compulsive call that had once drawn every werewolf in the city, but something gentler. The kind of calm that came from genuine contentment. They drove home in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled into their driveway, Mira suddenly spoke up. "Luna? Can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you think Daddy and Mama can see us? From heaven, I mean?" Luna considered the question carefully, thinking about all the ways love transcended physical boundaries. "I think love is stronger than death, sweetheart. So even if I don't know exactly how it works, I believe they can see how happy and loved you are." Mira nodded thoughtfully. "I think so too. Because sometimes, when I'm really happy, I feel like they're smiling." That evening, as Luna tucked Mira into bed, the child's words echoed in her mind. She thought about Marcus Grimm, who'd traded his career as a supernatural hunter for a quiet job as a security consultant, using his skills to protect the very beings he'd once pursued. He'd never officially joined their pack, but he'd become a trusted ally, someone they could count on when human authorities needed to be navigated or deterred. She thought about Dr. Rodriguez, who'd become not just Myra's therapist but a friend to their entire unusual family. About Father O'Brien, who'd quietly helped smooth the legal process and never asked uncomfortable questions about Luna's past. About the network of support that had formed around them, built on the foundation of Luna's years of anonymous kindness to others. Most of all, she thought about the child sleeping peacefully down the hall, who'd somehow transformed a solitary predator into a mother, a pack of loners into an extended family, and a hunter into a protector. As Luna prepared for tomorrow night's patrol, checking her gear and reviewing territory maps, she marveled at how seamlessly her two worlds had merged. She was still the alpha of her pack, still responsible for their safety and leadership. But she was also Myra's mother, responsible for homework help and bedtime stories and making sure there was always chocolate milk in the refrigerator. The roles should have been incompatible, but somehow they'd created a life that was richer and more meaningful than anything she'd experienced in 3 centuries of existence. Luna's phone buzzed with a text from Kieran. "All quiet on tonight's patrol. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be busy." She smiled and typed back, "Thanks. Tell everyone I said good night." As she turned off the lights and headed toward her own bedroom, Luna paused at Myra's doorway. The child was fast asleep, clutching the worn teddy bear Sarah had given her that first week, her face peaceful in the glow of the nightlight. "Good night, sweetheart," Luna whispered. "Sweet dreams." Walking toward her own room, Luna reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. A year ago, she'd been a creature of the night, driven by instinct and survival. Tonight, she was someone's mother, someone's alpha, someone's friend. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Outside, Marcus Grimm sat in his car across the street, conducting his weekly security check. It had become a routine, making sure Luna and Myra's neighborhood was safe, that no other hunters had picked up their trail, that the family he'd helped protect was still thriving. As he watched the lights go out in the house on Maple Street, Marcus thought about how much his own life had changed. He'd found a new purpose in protection instead of destruction, in building bridges instead of burning them down. Some might say he'd gone soft, that he'd lost his way. But watching Mira skip up the front steps after school each day, seeing Luna's transformation from predator to protector, Marcus knew he'd actually found himself. Love, it turned out, was the most transformative force in the universe. It could turn monsters into guardians, hunters into protectors, and broken children into sources of light that illuminated everyone around them. As Marcus drove away into the night, the house on Maple Street settled into peaceful quiet. Inside, a werewolf mother slept peacefully for the first time in centuries, and a little girl who'd lost everything dreamed of a future filled with love. They'd all learned that family wasn't about blood or species or the circumstances that brought you together. Family was about choosing to love each other every single day, no matter what. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that choice could transform everything into fists. This child had been abandoned by death, then by grief, then by a system that should have protected her. Where have you been staying since then? Different places. My aunt kept me for a while, but she said I reminded her too much of Mama and it made her sad. Then there was a foster family, but they had 4 other kids and there wasn't enough room. The social worker, Miss Jenkins, she tries real hard, but there's just not enough families who want kids like me. Kids like you? Myra's shoulders hunched. Sad kids. Kids whose parents are dead. Kids who cry too much and have nightmares and ask too many questions about when their real family is coming back. Luna felt something dark and fierce rise in her chest, the protective instinct she'd never felt for anyone except her pack. But this was different. This wasn't about territory or survival. This was about justice for a child who'd done nothing wrong except love people who couldn't stay. The pizza arrived, and Luna watched in amazement as Mira ate with careful, deliberate bites, as if the food might disappear if she enjoyed it too much. But gradually, as her immediate hunger was satisfied, she began to relax slightly. "This is really good," Mira said, then looked up at Luna with those 2 old eyes. "Are you going to call Miss Jenkins in the morning?" Luna had been asking herself the same question for the past hour. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to contact the authorities first thing and get Mira back into the system where she belonged. But looking at this child who'd been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect her, Luna couldn't bring herself to promise that. "We'll figure something out," she said instead. Mira nodded, accepting this non-answer with the resignation of someone who'd learned not to push for guarantees. She took another bite of pizza, then closed her eyes and whispered something so softly Luna almost missed it. "Thank you, God, for Luna and for this food and for feeling safe tonight. Please watch over Daddy and Mama in heaven, and help me be good so maybe someone will want to keep me someday." The words were simple, innocent, the kind of prayer any child might say. But as they left Myra's lips, something extraordinary happened. Luna felt it first, a wave of calm that started in her chest and spread outward like warm honey. The constant tension she carried, the predatory alertness that was as much a part of her as breathing, simply melted away. For a moment, she felt utterly at peace. But it wasn't just her. Through the pack bond that connected her to every werewolf in the territory, Luna felt the same sensation ripple outward. Kieran, who was probably prowling the warehouse district, suddenly stopped mid-stride. Sarah, hunting in the woods outside town, lifted her head in wonder. Even old Marcus, the grumpiest member of their pack, felt his usual irritation fade into something like contentment. 5 miles away, every werewolf in Luna's territory was touched by the same inexplicable sense of peace. Mira opened her eyes and smiled, the first real smile Luna had seen from her. "I always feel better after I pray. Daddy taught me that talking to God helps, even when things are scary." Luna stared at the child, her mind racing. What had just happened? That prayer, that whisper, had somehow affected every supernatural being in the area. But Mira clearly had no idea anything unusual had occurred. To her, it was just a simple expression of faith and gratitude. That's a beautiful prayer, sweetheart." Mira yawned, the exhaustion finally catching up with her now that she'd eaten. "I'm getting sleepy. Where should I sleep?" Luna looked around her apartment again. She had 1 bedroom, 1 couch, and absolutely no experience with childhood logistics. "You can take my bed. I don't sleep much anyway. I can sleep on the couch." "I don't want to take your bed." "Mira." Luna waited until the child looked at her. "You're taking the bed. End of discussion." Something in Luna's tone, firm but kind, seemed to reassure Mira. She nodded and slid off the couch, still holding her father's photograph. Luna found an old t-shirt that would work as a nightgown for the child, then tucked her into bed. Mira looked impossibly small in the large bed, but her eyes were already drooping with exhaustion. "Luna?" Myra's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you going to be here in the morning?" The question hit Luna like a punch to the gut. How many times had this child asked that question? How many times had the answer been no? "I'll be here," Luna said, and meant it. Mira smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. Luna stood in the doorway, watching this small stranger who had somehow turned her entire world upside down in the span of a few hours. Through the pack bond, she could feel the others, confused, curious, drawn to something they couldn't name. They'd have questions. Kieran especially would want answers she didn't have. But as she looked at Mira sleeping peacefully for what was probably the first time in months, Luna realized she didn't care about pack politics or supernatural mysteries. All that mattered was the promise she'd just made to a grieving child. She'd figure out the rest tomorrow. The end. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more.